Hello and welcome, guys, to the third episode of my stream, where we build a personal finance management application from scratch, completed from scratch, using Nest.js backend, and I think we'll use React's frontend. And let's quickly recap what we have been done the last week. So in the last stream, we have implemented the couple of useful classes that we will use later. It's kind of like a base abstract classes that we will be depending off. So these are the building blocks for a domain-driven design. And for those of you who watch me the first time, we're gonna build the application using the most modern techniques, most modern approaches, using domain-driven design, CQRS, I don't know, event storming, and so on. So in the last stream, we've built some kind of like a Lego blocks for the application for domain-driven design. These are aggregate. We defined aggregate. We defined domain event. We have defined entities, value objects, and we've started to define the repository for our application. And I think that the plan for today is to implement the tests for these blocks that we've implemented last stream, and maybe we are gonna define the base SQL repository. So the base class for the SQL repository that we will use later. Okay, so for those of you who watched me the first time, the rules are, so I'm gonna stream my coding session for 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes of streaming, I'm gonna switch back to the comment section and I'll answer your questions. So please don't hesitate to ask me something, or just say hi, or just share what are you thinking about my stream, what should I improve, right? So I feel that your feedback is really valuable for me, because I'm gonna make it like the best for you guys. So please share your feedback, share your thoughts, and let's go. Okay, so the total duration, as usual, will be about 2 hours. So as I told previously, every half an hour I'm gonna stop coding and switch to the comments. So that's why I'm gonna start a timer right now. I use the application, but I always forgot the name. Be Focus Pro. Yeah, this is really good. This is a really good app for like Pomodoro technique, and it's really like improves my productivity. So yeah, I'm gonna start timer for 25 minutes and I'm gonna switch to the coding. Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go. Let's go, guys. So let's implement some tests. But before we implement the testing modules, I'm gonna do one important thing, because the standard installation of Nest.js comes with the Jest testing framework, and for me personally, I really hate it. So I don't know for you guys, but for me it's like always the pain in the ass to use the Jest, because it's so buggy. There are so many issues not related to testing at all. Always, each time I start a new project, there is a Jest, and I'm like, okay, this time it's gonna be okay. I'm just gonna like fix all the issues, and boom, once again, it doesn't work. So usually what I do, I remove Jest. I remove Jest at all, and I replace it with the different testing framework, which is called Vitest. Let's Google it. So Vitest. Vitest is more suitable for me because I didn't ever get any bugs with y-test, especially, when I'm talking about bugs, I'm talking about, like, for example, you run your test, you got some failures, right? And you want to debug it. And usually, when I start debugging my tests in VS Code using Jest, there are always something like some issues, some errors, something like I don't know how to resolve these issues, and I just waste a lot of time trying to debug tests, and that sucks, right? That's why I usually switch to y-test at the first step, and I don't really have any issues with y-test in the past. Okay, so I think that Nest.js documentation has a special article on how to set up y-test. Let's search for y-test. Here we go. But before we can proceed with y-test, first we need to set up SWC. SWC is kind of like a super speedy compiler for Nest.js, but for some reason they do not include this SWC compiler by default in the default installation. I don't know why. Maybe if you know the answer, please write in the comments, but sounds really weird for me, because it is like approximately 20 times faster than the default TypeScript compiler. Why the fuck they don't use it, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's just install it. And we need to install these two packages, SWC CLI and SWC core. Let's go back to our cursor. Let's go back to our console, and first let's remove fucking Jest, because I really hate it. npm remove Jest. Yeah. And let's remove ts Jest. npm remove ts Jest as well. Yes. Let's remove these configs. We don't really need them anymore. So super test, let's keep it. Types Jest. npm remove at types / Jest. Okay, perfect. You know what? Maybe I was wrong, because I see that SWC is included by default. So sorry for that. I really thought that they doesn't include by default, but it seems that they are, since maybe it's because it is the latest version of Nest.js, but I swear for you, I didn't see it before. Anyway, okay, so we have this SWC CLI, we have SWC core, right? What else do we need? One second, let's just quick check the stream. Seems good. Yeah, seems that streaming is good. Okay, so we have SWC. Perfect. But in order to use SWC, we need to provide a config for Nest.js Nest CLI JSON file. So we need to copy that, go back to the cursor, open Nest CLI JSON, and we need to put here in compiler options. We need to put here builder SWC, like this. Okay, what else? To customize builder's behavior, you can pass an object containing two attributes and options as follows. Okay, we don't need it. There is also a type checking. SWC does not perform any type checking itself, but the default TypeScript compiler does these checks. So we need to turn it on, and we need to put one more option to compiler options. One more record. Okay, it's good. CLI plugins, SWC configuration. Let's try to copy this default configuration and see if Is okay or not? SWC RC. Yep. Paste. Nice. Let's go back to documentation. Monorepo. We don't use monorepo for now, so we can skip it. Monorepo and CLI. Common pitfalls. Jest plus SWC. We don't need Jest. Fucking Jest. I really hate it. Oh my god. So, what else? What else? Vitest. Finally, we need to install Vitest. Let's copy this and let's put npm add -d and the list of the packages to install. Click enter. Oh, we need to upgrade our npm. Let's copy this and let's upgrade. Unable to find the global bin. What the fuck? What the fuck? Anyway, let's continue to work on our project. npm approve builds, yes build, enter, approve, yes, yes, perfect. So we just installed Vitest. We have just installed SWC config, right? And I think we are good to go. I think we are good to go. Let's maybe try to upgrade SWC CLI, because as you can see, SWC core has been upgraded, but maybe SWC CLI will also has some newer versions. Let's just copy it and put it here. Nope, seems like it is the latest version. Yeah, it's already up to date. Okay. Anyway, what's next? What's next? So we need to put a configuration. For that, we need to create a vitest.config.ts file, and let's try first to put a default configuration. So we create a new file, vitest.config.ts. Okay, let's put default configuration. So what do we have here? Okay, we define the configuration for testing. Okay, we just want to use some plugins SWC Vite, and we need to put here all the aliases that we have in our project, because Vitest does not work with TypeScript aliases by default, as I understand. Maybe I'm wrong, but seems that we need to put it here. For that, we need to open our. Let's close all the other files and let's open our tsconfig.json file. Oh no. I thought that's oh my god. We don't have any. Fuck. We don't have any aliases, but I usually provide these aliases by default. Let me quickly check. I just want to open my other project and just copy paste everything from there. Okay, copy and paste. Yep. So we will use our modules folder, config folder. Let's check if we have one. Yes, we have a configs folder, but it's okay. Libs, we have libs. Tests, we have tests, which is empty. And we have src. Seems good. Okay, now we need to put all these aliases into the ts vitest config.ts. First, let's make it a string. Now we need to put add here. Add src. Now we need to make the same stuff for all the other aliases. Add modules. Resolve tier name src modules, which is good. What else? Add config. Add libs and add tests like this. Okay, seems good. So what else do we have in our config in the documentation? So this configuration file sets up the vitest environment, root directory, and SWC plugin. Okay, you should also create a separate configuration file for E2E tests with an additional include field that specifies the test page request. Okay, let's create a separate file. It should be called vitest.config.e2e.ts. So vitest.config.e2e.ts. Let's paste. Okay. Yeah, seems good. So what's the next step? Additionally, you can set the alias options to support TypeScript pass in your tests. So basically we just want to like copy paste everything, right? Like this. Why resolve is not resolved? Fuck. It's weird. But anyway, let's copy resolve once again and put it here. Yeah, seems good. Unlike jest, vitest does not automatically resolve TypeScript pass aliases like src. This may lead to okay. To resolve this issue, add the following resolve.alias configuration in your vitest config.ts file. But we have it already. Resolve alias. Why they put it twice here? Don't kind of understand. Export default. Okay. Anyway. So the next step is to change any E2E test imports using import star as request from secure test. We don't have any tests right now. We removed all the default tests, so it's kind of, we can skip it. This is necessary, blah blah. And lastly, we need to update test scripts in our package.json file to the following. Okay, let's just copy paste it. Copy. Open package.json. Where are scripts? Yep. And paste. So vitest run coverage, vitest inspect, okay, and vitest run E2E. Yeah, seems good. Okay, next step. You can check out a working example in this repo. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's just try to run our application because we just installed the SWC and now we use it. that's why I'm gonna make sure that everything is okay and we don't need to make any adjustments. pnpm run start dev. Yay, found 0 issues, and seems that everything works well. Very good. Perfect, perfect guys, no issues. Wow, crazy. I'm so happy when there are no issues. I don't know why. So okay, so we've installed PyTest, and now we can proceed with our tests. Let's go. So inside our tests folder, we just want to create a new. One second. Let's quickly run pnpm run test coverage, and command failed. Why is it failed? No test files found. Yeah, it's kind of, we could expect that because we don't have any tests at all in our project. Okay, so let's create the first one. In our test folder, let's create a new folder that is called unit for our unit tests. And inside unit folder, let's create a DDD folder. And inside DDD, let's create the first test, aggregate.spec.ts. Oops, I made a typo. TS. Okay. So, just wanna check a stream quickly. One second, guys. Okay, seems that the stream is okay. And now let's continue with our first test in our project. So we need to test our aggregates, right? For that case, let me just close everything. I'm gonna open the aggregate base class on the right side, and I'm gonna keep aggregate test file on the left side, like this. Okay, the first step is to put a describe method. Oh, we don't need node test, we need a PyTest, I believe. PyTest. Okay, and this is test for the aggregate root. Aggregate root, and yep, define a function. So first we need to create our mock aggregate, right? For that, let's put right here. Maybe we can move it to the separate file later, but for now let's just create an test aggregate class like this. It should extend an aggregate root, right? And we need to provide some properties, type definition, and this class will only have one property, which is name, which is string. Okay, name, which is string, which is a public field. Okay. Yep, let's create a constructor. So in the constructor we will accept not the name, but we will accept props, which will be the object containing the name field, right? And oh my god, what's wrong? Name is deprecated. Maybe it's somehow connected with, because each constructor has its own property name, which contains the name of the class. Okay, we don't need to make it public, to be honest. We just need to pass the props to the like parent class. Okay, so for that we need to, so where is constructor for entity? So we need to pass an object. We need to pass an object ID, which is test ID, and props like this. Let's run. Expected 0 arguments, but we got 1. What the fuck? Ah, oh my fucking god, I'm so fuck, блять, просто. Sorry guys, we imported aggregate root from the wrong place. It is from Nest.js EQRS module, but we need to use our own implementation, which is in DDD folder, but why cannot I import it? Because it's not. Why is it aggregate? Not an aggregate root. Okay, anyway. Yep. So the problem is gone now. We create our test aggregate class, and let's define some public methods. So sorry. First, we need to put a validate method because it's kind of required, right? Validation is required. Yep. And let's and one more thing is that it requires the implementation of an ID. As you remember, we've defined the ID property as an abstract property just in order to redefine the type for that ID, because some of our entities may have a UUID type, and some of our IDs may be of nano ID type, some may be strings, and so on. So that's why we kind of make it abstract. But for now, I think that it's not really like a good practice, because if we will define, for example, if we will define ID here, it means that we will have to, it will be undefined by default, right? And we will have to put something like this dot ID equals test ID, which is kind of redundant. That's why let's make it not abstract, and let's make it not abstract, and let's switch to our comment section, because now we have a 5 minutes break. Okay, I open the chats. Chat is empty. Chat is empty. Okay. Okay, guys, please don't hesitate to ask me any questions that you are like interested in. We can just, just say hi. Just say, how are you today? What's the weather in the place where you live? Just come on, guys. Let's chat with each other. Let's communicate. Because sometimes I think that I'm just a weird guy that like speaking by myself, alone. I don't want to feel that. So just put your questions, comments, and feedback, of course. And for now, because we don't have any comments in the moment, let's make a quick pause. So I'm gonna get back in 4 minutes. So see you later. Okay guys, let's continue, and I'm starting a new timer like this, and let's continue implementing our first test in our project, which is the test case for unit test for our test aggregate. Okay, so I removed an abstract, how do you call it? Abstract, what is that? Keyword? Modifier. Abstract modifier from our IT, which means that it's now has a constant value of aggregate ID, which is not good. We need somehow to define that type of an ID. That's why I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna accept not only entity props here, but an optional argument for an ID like this, and we just need to replace aggregate ID with entity ID. Okay, and there, and there. Okay. So, what's the problem? Let's remove an aggregate ID at all. Yeah, let's remove it all, and this is a string by default, right? So base entity props will accept an entity ID, right? Like this, like this. Okay, so now we importing entity ID here, and so what's wrong here? Argument of type string is not assignable to a parameter of type entity ID. Why? Because it could be okay. And one more thing is here, entity props. What's wrong? Okay. Okay, I think we're good to go. So now we can define the type for the ID when we create a new instance of the entity class. Not instance, but not like a child class for entities. And that's why in our aggregate we need to do the following, the same stuff, right? Entity ID, like this. Okay, I think we're good to go. And now there we need to provide a type for our ID, which will be string. Yep. And let's quickly check. ID is a string. Yep, perfect. So our test aggregate class is defined. Let's quickly check what's going on with our stream. I think that it's okay now. And what I want to do, let's add one more method here for adding a domain event, because now the main one of the main differences between an ordinary entity and an aggregate entity, aggregate root entity, is that aggregate can contain some domain events and can dispatch these events in order to change some state of the other aggregates, right? That is what we discussed in our last stream. So we need to somehow make it possible, and we need to add a new method. Public add test event, and it will be void. And all we need to do is just to add event, and we need to define this event, right? First, let's just let's define a simple event. So class test domain event extends domain event like this, and we just need to pass a constructor here. Okay, props domain event props what's wrong? Domain event. We do not export it. Export domain event props. Okay, of type. No, because we don't really fucking care at all. Okay. You know what? Maybe we don't fucking need it at all. So just remove it. Just extend the base domain event. Yeah, I think it's okay. So, new test domain event. What's wrong? It expects one argument, which is, I believe, aggregate ID, right? So we need to provide an aggregate ID here, like this. Okay, we're good to go. So by calling these methods, we will add a new domain event to the array of domain events of this aggregate here. And after that, we can dispatch all these events by calling the dispatch events methods. So far so good. So far so good. Let's proceed with our tests. So first we need to define this aggregate. Let aggregate of type test aggregate. We need a logger because we use logger for dispatching events. Let logger of type logger port like this, and we also will need an event emitter because we use it for dispatching events too. So let event emitter of type event emitter 2. Event emitter 2. Okay. So what else? What else? Before each test, we need to do the following. So aggregate will be a new test aggregate. So we're kind of recreating these aggregate before executing any of our test cases, right? We also recreating logger and event emitter. For logger, let's just mock it. So mock logger equals so basically we have only 4 functions: debug, but not just fn, it is vfn because we use ytest. Debug, what else? Error. Oh my god. What else do we have? Let's quickly check. Logger port. Debug, error, log, ewarn. Okay. And the same stuff for our event emitter. And in event emitter, we use only one function, which is emit async. So let's just mock it. Let's just mock it. Like this. Like this. We don't use these return value at all, right? Here we just call event async and that's it. So that's why we can just make it fake by calling mock resolved value, which is undefined. And this mock event emitter will be as undefined as event emitter, but just to make it work, because we only need this emit async function. We don't use any other functions from event emitter. We're gonna like fake it as event emitter. But what's wrong here? Conversion of type emit async to type undefined may be a mistake because neither. Not undefined, unknown, sorry. Unknown. Yep. So, before each test, we are recreating all these values, right? And yep, let's create our first test. It should be initialized with empty array of domain events. Should be initialized with an empty array of domain events. And we need to expect what's wrong here? The signature name string function is deprecated. Interesting. Use options as the second argument. Use options as the second argument. What's wrong? Something is wrong with yeah, sorry. Yeah, now it's good. Now it's good. And let's just quickly check if our tests are fine. npm run test. Yay! The first test is created and the first test is passed. We are fucking cool, guys. So yeah, of course it will be initialized with an empty array of domain events because we kind of, because it is defined in the aggregate class, like constructor. Not constructor, but it is a default. It's the default value of this domain events array. let's check if our add event method works. So we need to provide, it should add domain events to the list of domain events. Let's check. Aggregate add test event. Yep. So we are adding a new domain event, right? And after that, our domain events array will have the length of 1, which is correct. And also, we need to check that our domain event we have in our domain events array is an instance of test domain event class, right? Let's check. Boom, shakalaka. Perfect, perfect, so far so good. So the next thing that we need to check is if we can clear all the domain events. So that's why we need to add a domain event. We need to clear domain events after that, and we need to expect that these domain events are equal to an empty array, which is good. Let's check. Perfect. The next thing is about dispatching events. Okay, so the most important step is it should dispatch domain events, right? So first we need to add a domain event. Okay, after that we need to await when these domain events will be dispatched using mock logger and mock event emitter, right? We are expecting that emit async will have been called one time, which is fine. Let's check that our logger has this message inside. So the next step is to check that expect mock logger debug to have been called 1 times, right? And expect that mock logger debug to have been called with I think I missed something, because here we use our CLS service manager, right? But we do not mock it anywhere. We do not mock it anywhere. So let's create a mock. Let's create a mock. v.mock nest js cls. Okay. Oh, what's wrong? Run. So get CLS service, we are mocking this function, and we mock that the return value of this function will be an object with get ID, which will return the test ID string, right? And what's wrong, man? Yeah, should be good now. Should be good now, sorry. Okay, so what we do here? What we do here, we just mocking that we have a like Nest.js CLS package because we use this package here. And where is it? Yeah, and this package we are mocking that it contains CLS service manager, which we use here in our actual aggregate. And this CLS service manager has its get CLS service, which we use here, and we mock that this function returns a value of an object which contain get ID, right? We use this get ID somewhere here. Yeah, we use the get ID function to retrieve the request ID from our context. So we need to mock this. We need to mock this function, and we're mocking that the return value of this function is test ID. So test ID is kind of like constant request ID, which will be stored in our fake mocked context, right? So that's why let's proceed with our debugging function. So mock logger debug to have been called with, and we need to provide a string, so it will be a test ID in square brackets, test domain event, but let's make it not test domain event, but let's make it like that. So not test domain event, but event dispatched for aggregate, blah blah blah, test aggregate, and test ID. Test ID is an ID of our, so it should be like that. Test aggregate dot name. Test aggregate and ID of the aggregate. Test. Should be okay now. So we are expecting that we will get this string in our console, right? And what else do we need to expect? That our event emitter, expect mock event emitter to have been called with test domain event and with the test domain event class, right? Because look here, our event emitter will be our emit async function accept the constructor name as the first argument, which is here, and the second argument is an instance of event object itself, right? So it will be test domain event. Not instance, but a class. Yeah, expect any of these class. Yeah, should be good. So do we need to check anything else? Yeah, after that we are calling clear events function. So the last step is to check that our domain events is an empty array. Let's try to run it and let's go to our quick break, and we have a fail here. We have a fail here, so okay, let's debug it later, but now I'm switching to the comment section. Where is it? Where is the comment section? Okay, so no questions for now, which is good. Maybe not, I don't know. So that's why I'm gonna hit the pause and I'll get back in 4 minutes. So see you guys. Okay guys, so the first half of our stream has gone, so let's just make it a bit quicker. So we get an error. The error is because we expect that we will have a test domain event string here, but we have a function. We have a function here because we are getting the name property of a constructor of test domain event, which is a function. So in that case, we just need to remove it, I believe. I hope that it will work. Yay, it's passed. It's passed, guys. It's perfect. And finally, let's make our final test. We should be sure that we are able to dispatch multiple domain events. Should dispatch multiple domain events. Okay, so what we have here, we're adding 2 events, which is good. We are dispatching these events. We're expecting that our mock event emitter will have been called with like 2 times, and to have been called with these parameters, right? And we also expecting that our logger will have been called 2 times, and will have been called with these parameters. And the final step, that our domain events array will be empty. Let's check. Finally, guys, let's quickly check coverage. And as we can see now, our aggregate base class is 100% covered with unit tests, which is perfect. Guys. So yeah, we have a little bit less than 1 hour to cover all other classes in our project. Oh my god, I forgot one thing. I think we forgot to implement a command and a query for CQRS the last time. Oh my god. I thought we should have been implemented this, but okay, let's finish tests. Let's finish current tests, and after that I'm gonna switch and create a couple more classes in our DDD folder for the classes for commands and the class for a query, because we're gonna use CQRS pattern in our backend application because we are cool, we're modern, we are gonna use the modern tech stack and the modern approach, modern architecture, because like we are high valued engineers, motherfuckers. Okay, so let's create a new file, entity.spec.ts. This is a file which will contain the tests for our entity. We can close now domain events, we can close aggregates, and now we're gonna test entities, right? So describe entity, and as usual, let's first create a mock entity. Let's create mock entity. So class test entity extends entity. Let's define props type of this entity. So interface test entity props. We are gonna have 2 keys, name, which is string, and for example age, which is number. Name and age. So our entity will be of type test entity props, this. Entity ID will be string, which is good. And we need to define a validate function. It will be empty. What else? Let's not make it empty. You know what? Let's make validation. Let's make validation. If the age value is less than a 0, we will throw an error. Then, not error, let's maybe argument invalid exception, argument out of range exception. Yeah, age must be greater than 0. Perfect. So the basic validation is done. We have a test entity. And yep, let's describe our test cases. So the first step is it should create an entity. It's okay. So let's define like a basic values valid props equals name John Doe, age 30, and the valid ID just for testing. Okay, so it should create an entity. So we're creating a new entity by calling the new test entity constructor. We are passing the valid props, which is good. And we expect that entity needs to be defined first. So expect entity to be defined. Great. Then we expect this ID, that ID of this entity will be a valid ID. We expect that the props of this entity will be ID, valid ID, created at will be entity created, updated, and so on. So yeah, so doesn't make any sense, to be honest. Expect entity get props dot name to equal, not equal to be valid props name. Okay, entity get props age to be valid props age. Yeah, let's try npm run test. Yeah, it's passed. It's definitely passed. So the next step, we just test our constructor, right? The next step let's describe a new group here for testing a constructor of an entity, and let's put our what the fuck. let's put our existing test inside this group. So we'll have a constructor tests, and we'll also describe validation tests after that. So we need to make sure that our validation logic works well, because it's really important. Oh my god. Oh my god. I forgot to run a timer. My bad. Okay, let's wait until the 5:30, and I'm gonna switch to the comment section of that. Okay, so validate and a constructor. So we need to check that if we do not provide created add and updated add properties, it should be a date of creation, right? How can we test that? So it should set created add and updated add to current date if not provided. Fine. So first we check that these values are defined, entity created and entity updated add. Not just defined, I think it should be instance of date class. The same goes for updated. Okay, so, and let's check that the difference between the current timestamp and the timestamp of creation is almost the same. So we cannot check that the created at, for example, created at date is the same as like date.now, which is the current timestamp, because there is a small delay between our tests running and like the validation logic. So we need to provide like a small delay for that, not delay, but like threshold. Expect math dot abs. So we are getting the time of creation and the current time, and the difference between these two time values should be less than, I think 100 is enough. And the same for updated add property. Yeah, that's good. Let's check. Hey, it's failed. But which one is failed? No test found in suit validate. That's okay, because we don't have any. It's not a problem. PyTest. Yeah. Now it's okay. So created and updated add properties are fine. What else do we need to check? We need to check that we need to check that if our props are empty, that we throw the argument invalid exception in that case. Okay, let's just check all these three conditions. So it should throw an error if props are empty. We have a type error here, but let's create entity props. We're gonna fake it as a create entity props because just in order to stop our TypeScript compiler complaining, right? Test entity props like this. So now we get rid of the error, but still we have no props defined here, as you can see, and we need to check that this function will throw an error of type argument not provided exception. What's wrong? Unsafe argument of type error typed assigned to parameter of type string. Let's maybe remove this no unsafe argument configuration from our criteria. Okay, we can do it later. Let's quickly check. Hey, it's failed now. So we're expecting argument not provided exception. What's wrong here? We're expecting argument not provided exception. Because I'm fucking stupid. It's not argument not provided exception, it's argument invalid exception. Argument invalid exception, right? Argument invalid exception. Now should be good. Yeah, it's good. The same check for the case if these props are not of an object type, are not an object. So for example, we're going to make props as a string. And we should also have an argument invalid exception in that case. Let's check. Yep. And the last check is that we should have an argument out of range exception in case if, for example, there are too many properties defined, because as you remember, we can define a max properties value, which is 50 for now. And if, for example, we have a 51 properties, it's kind of too much, and we're gonna send an out of range exception in that case. So let's quickly check it. It should throw an error if props have more than if props have too many properties. So we are creating an array of 51 elements. An array of 51 elements. Let's rewrite it. For example, it will be const too many props equals empty object, and for yeah, now it's okay. Too many props. Like this. And we're gonna throw argument out of range exception. Let's check. Yep, it's okay. Okay, so our constructor checks are okay, and the only thing that that is left is to create our validation checks. But first, let's switch to our comment section quickly. And I'm gonna go to the comments. Let me check comments everywhere. Yeah, it seems that you guys are not really commenting enough. Okay then, so I'm gonna hit pause and I'll get back in 3 minutes, I believe. So see you a bit later. Okay, guys, the last part of our stream, so we have just half an hour. Half an hour. So let's finish our tests quickly. Yep. So the validation. Oh my God, I removed it. What's wrong? So so first we need to check if we are calling validate function during the construction of our object instance, of our entity instance, right? So we need to check it should call validate methods. It should call validate methods. Okay, const entity equals new entity, blah blah blah, props equals valid props, and we are expecting that we are calling valid method and it should not throw any errors, right? But it's kind of, let's make it invalid. It will be easier for us. Const invalid props equals, for example, name John Doe h minus 1. So the props are invalid. And now we're expecting that it will throw an error. Argument of range exception. Let's check. Oops. Unknown error, h must be greater than 0. Unknown error, h must be greater than 0. Why is unknown? Why is it unknown? What's wrong? Why is it unknown? Okay. So we are calling the validate function, right? If this props.h is less than 0, we're throwing new error h must be greater than 0, which is kind of okay. But why do we have an what the fuck? Why is it unknown error? It should be argument out of range exception. It should be argument of out of range exception. So I have a message here. This is super weird. Let's ask AI. Let's ask AI. What's wrong? So, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. Yeah, sure. The entity should not be created at all because we are calling the validate methods during creation, not after that. Of course. Oh my god. So, new test entity. Like this. Yeah, now it's okay. Now it's perfectly okay. Yeah, it's my fault. So I forgot that we should call an exception before the creation of an instance of the entity. Oh my god. Okay, what's next? So let's check the equals methods. Equals methods should so describe equals it should return true if entities have the same ID. Should return true if, not if, but for the same entity instances, right? So if instances are the same, we're expecting that it should be equal to each other. We're creating an entity, and entity should be equal to the same entity. The next step is that we need to check if it will return true for entities with the same ID. It should return true for entities with the same ID. So the first entity has valid ID, the second entity has the same ID, so entity 1 should be equal to entity 2. Okay, the next step, we need to check that it should return false for entities with different IDs. So for example, if the first entity has valid ID and the second entity has another ID, it should return false. The next check is that we need to return false in case of entity is null or undefined, right? So it should return false for null or undefined. So const entity equals new entity. Expect entity equals nulls to be false. Expect entity equals undefined to be false. What's wrong here? Okay, let's just like this. Let's check. Yay, all passed. And I think that the last check is that if entity is not an object, we should also return false. It should return false for non-entity objects. So entity, expect entity equals object to be false, entity equals just like so we're checking first, we check an empty object, and then we check non-empty object, but still it is the object. So entity instance should not be equal to just an object, right? Let's check, and it passed. Perfect. Okay, the last step, I think, or maybe one of the last steps, let's also check get props method, right? So describe get props. You know what, guys? I think that the next stream I'm gonna create all the tests with AI, because it takes so much time, because we already spent 2 hours just creating like tests. It's too much. I think you're pretty bored right now, because I am bored. I'm bored of creating tests. Every developer hates creating fucking tests, but it's necessary. So what first we need to check? So the only thing that we need to check is that we are gonna get the freezed copy of the props in the response, right? It should return a copy of entity props. Should return a frozen copy of entity props. So const entity equals new test entity, const props equals entity get props. We're getting all the props from the entity. We expect props not to be valid props. Why? Why? It's bullshit. Ah, of course, because no, it's a bullshit. Yes, sure. It is not the same object as valid props because we are turning the new object that is a frozen copy of the previous one, but it should equal to the valid props, right? And if we will try to change its name, we should get an error because it is frozen. Let's check. Some fails. Expect props to be equal. Of course, we have some expect props dot id to equal valid props dot not expect props dot age to equal valid props dot age, expect props dot name to equal valid props dot name. Okay, let's try once again, and it's fast. Perfect. Okay, and the last thing. So what else do we need to check? This static function is entity, but it's quite simple, and we also need to check this toObject function. Let's describe it. Describe toObject. So we need to check that it returns just a plain object with the primitive types, right? For that case, we need to create a new entity, const entity equals new test entity, const object равно equals object to object. Okay, so what else? Expect object to equal, not object to equal, expect object dot id to be valid id. Let's define. So expect object.id to be valid id, expect object.name to be valid props.name, expect object.age to be valid props.age, expect object.created to be instance of date, and expect date add to be instance of date, and we need to check if it is frozen or not. Expect object dot is frozen to be true, like this. Let's check. Wow, it's failed. What's wrong? Because I'm fucking stupid. Because I'm stupid once again. Each return a frozen object with entity properties. Like this. And it passed. Yes. The last step is to check this static method. And I think we can call it a day. Describe static methods. Is entity should return true for entity instances. Const entity equals new test entity. Expect entity dot is entity to be true. Yep. Let's check. And it's passed. Let's check our coverage, and we can call it a day. So we've implemented tests for our aggregate. We've implemented 100% test coverage for our entities, which is good. There is also like some exceptions covered too, which is also great. And I think in the next stream we are gonna quickly implement tests for our repository, for our very objects, and for domain events. And after that, in the next stream we are gonna create a couple of new classes, one for command base, abstract command class, and one is abstract query class for secure REST implementation. And yeah, let's quickly check comment section, because we are kind of ready to end today's stream. There is no comments. So please, if you watch this video like a couple days after the recording, please just feel free to write anything. Just drop a message here. Say hi, say how are you, what's the weather in your city. In my city in Kuala Lumpur, it's quite nice warm weather all the year round, so it's quite sunny and it's great. Okay, so let's check our calendar. I think that the next stream, you know what, usually I make my streams on the weekends, but on the next weekend I'm gonna travel a bit. I'm gonna visit a couple of cool cities. I'm gonna visit Singapore, Hong Kong, and Macau. So I think that let's try to make the next stream on Thursday, the 20th of March in the evening. Yeah, should be nice, because I'm not available on the weekend. I'm not gonna take my laptop with me, and yeah, it's just a 1 week like exception, and after this week, after the next week, all the next streams will be on the weekends. But I'm thinking about increasing the stream size, stream length, to not to make it for 2 hours, but for 3 hours maybe, because I guess that 2 hours is too low. Because come on, we spent 2 hours today, but we just implemented 2 tests. It's insane. It will take forever to make our app. So let's try to make 3 hour stream. Yeah, should be cool. What do you think about it? Please write in the comment section. And yeah, I think for now we can call it a day. So let's commit our tests. Aggregate and entity tests. Yep, that's it. So thank you for watching me, guys. Thank you for being with me. See you on the next Thursday, the 20th of March. See you and take care.